Well, everybody, we're heading to West Springfield, trying to catch that second rally. My swing dance in Cambridge is canceled because the whole town is locked down. Musicians I know that need to play up in New Hampshire can't leave that area. No one can leave their homes because of this manhunt that's underway for the Boston Marathon bombers, one of which is dead and the other one's at large, according to news reports. Anyway, so my plans change. I hope I go to Springfield. Well, here we are. We're at the West Springfield exit. Hey.
It's very interesting to see a member of the press holding a Culpeper flag.
Well, I'm an independent press.
Okay.
But I won't claim that I'm not biased like the rest of them do.
Okay. You're just biased in the right way.
I'm biased in my own way.
There you go.
Fiercely unbiased.
Fiercely.
Hey, can you guys hear me all right? Yeah. All right, we're going to get started right now. So again, I'd like to welcome all my fellow Patriot and Oath Keepers to this wonderful event that we're having today on April 19th, 2013. Right now, we're going to begin with a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. And then we're going to get into our first speaker, who is going to be Larry Pratt, and we're going to have an intro for him, for those of you that don't know him. So right now, we'd like to have a moment of silence for all of the law enforcement officers that we've lost through the years, as well as military members, both overseas and at home, as well as in the tragic Boston event that occurred on the 15th. And we'd just like to have a moment of silence at this time. Thank you. Now we're going to begin with a Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Right now we're going to have Tom Moore come up and introduce our first speaker.
It's not every day that you get to introduce a personal hero, somebody that's been in this fight since I was in high school or even before. And it's interesting, a long time ago, I actually belonged to the NRA, and one of the things that they're the biggest gun organization, and they do a lot of good things like teaching firearms, but they're kind of like McDonald's. I don't consider them the best. One of the things that the NRA says is, hey, just go ahead and enforce all the gun laws on the books. Well, what's the problem with that? The problem is a lot of the gun laws, or most of the gun laws, are unconstitutional and they're infringements. America has only one real no-compromise gun group that's been around, and for the longest time, I believe 20 years now, Larry Pratt has been its president. Without further ado, let's have a big New England Patriots Day welcome for Mr. Larry Pratt, President of Gun Owners of America. Larry.
Trying to make me younger. Actually, it's been over 30 years at Gun Owners of America, and there's still a lot of laws left to repeal, so we won't be going out of business anytime soon. Although we are celebrating what happened in the United States Senate this week, I want to tell you that was touch and go. That fight did not come easily, and it was just a tribute to some of the leaders in the Senate, people like Rand Paul and Senator Cruz, that have really brought some new energy, people that happily, I can tell you, we supported when they ran against the establishment who was trying to send us one more rhino Republican from Kentucky and from Texas. Well, happily that didn't happen. And look at the difference just a few new guys have been able to make. So we are, that applause is for them. They get it. They understand that this fight that we're in, some have called it a cultural war, it is really a fight of we the people against some folks that think they were born to rule and kind of identify themselves as being in the ruling class. At least they think that way, they operate that way, they're above the law. Look at the Double Barrel Joe's advice on how to take care of home security. Just open up a window and fire out the back, a guy did that about a month after the vice president imbued us with his wisdom. The guy was taken to jail. That's what kind of good idea that is. And then his advice for the ladies was really tip-top. You can tell how knowledgeable about guns the man is. Just use that shotgun to protect yourself. It's a good thing you don't have to mess around with that AR or some really nasty AK, whatever. So somebody took him up on it and showed a number of women, and I think it was legit. I think it was the first time they were firing a gun, and their boyfriends or their husbands should have been slapped because they hadn't warned them what was going to happen. And the first one, the gal's on her backside after she fires the shotgun, and another one, the gun blows out of her arms, and things like that were happening. One of them got up, and I kind of think it was legit. Alan, hadn't warned her, of course, what was going to happen. And in the last scene, there's a gal firing an AR-15, just boom, 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 boom. Amazing the vice president's wisdom. And I know for a fact that people have tried to explain to him, and he just won't listen. So this is part of the characteristic of the ruling class. They are so arrogant. They know so much. And it doesn't matter if they're putting women on their backs with their great advice. They just won't take it. I've been dealing with people like this for a long time, and I'm aware that it's international, the problem of the ruling class mentality. There was one time back when the Brits were getting ready to impose their current near total gun ban, and a member of parliament was on CNN International with yours truly. And I told him, I said, you know, we have a lot of experience in our country because of different state laws, different county laws even, that you are going to see an increase in violent crime if you pass this law. By the way, they did. They are the fourth most violent country in the world. They like to talk about how low their murder rate is, which it is, but they are the fourth most violent country in the world. Only three countries, El Salvador, Honduras, and Jamaica, who are all kind of known for their violent societies. And somehow we are supposed to look up to the Brits. You know, I've had some experience with one Brit lately. He's trying to undo the war for independence, I think. And all he did for me, anyway, was to remind me why we're no longer British. The victory that we had this week in the Senate was in considerable measure, and I hope I don't get too much into the weeds of how they vote in the Senate, but Senator Thune had an amendment, his bill, that was ready to go once they opened the floor on the gun control measure that was defeated, as it turned out. But had it not been, he had an amendment waiting, which is his bill. His bill would make it so that somebody in Wyoming, because they're one of 4 states that you don't need a permit to carry a concealed firearm. You imagine that? They actually believe in the Constitution in Wyoming. And so that person under the Thune bill, if it were law, would be able to go to New York City. I don't know why he would want to do that, but I'm just saying, he could go to New York City and he could carry concealed legally because of that Wyoming driver's license. Meanwhile, the poor schlubs that live there, well, they just have to take bullets from the crooks because the crooks are the only ones that have guns in New York and carry them concealed. Duh. So Thune's bill was out there, and for that reason, Reid established the vote level of more than 50%. It was going to take 60 votes to move Senator Toomey's anti-gun bill. And we will remember Senator Toomey when he's up for re-election. And so his measure was going to have 60 votes to be voted on because they were afraid Thune could win a vote and get it on as an amendment to the Toomey bill. And then when the Toomey bill went over to the House, I mean, even John Boehner might have allowed the bad stuff to be stripped off, and then you'd have had just a pro-Second Amendment kind of a bill. And that had Harry Reid spooked, and so that's the reason he put the level at 60. Well, they only had 54 senators that thought that they were entitled to sit as a constitutional convention. And since they needed 60, it failed. So that is, in good measure, thanks to Senator Thune, who introduced that particular form of a national carry bill that would respect those states that do not require a permit. The other bills have been introduced for national carry, but they all dealt in terms of permits. And so Thune had the real deal, and it did the real job. And happily, there's a lot of gnashing of teeth over in Bloomberg's mansion. And all of his billions of dollars weren't able to overcome what we did. We, the people, were calling and writing so much. I'm told that one day last week, before the vote, the Toomey's office had 45,000 calls in one 24-hour period. Obviously, if you picked up the phone, "Hey, you dirty rotten, what are you back here?" It was great. It was great. And hopefully, that's not going to be forgotten when he has to run in about 4 more years. It's incredible when you think about it. He ran against Senator Arlen Specter in a primary, took on the establishment. And the reason we got involved in the race was Toomey had voted pro-Second Amendment in the House, and Specter always voted with us when we didn't need him. And as soon as there was a real crunch, he was gone. And so Toomey ran against the anti-gunner, and we supported the pro-gunner. It's as if the spirit of Arlen Specter has possessed Senator Toomey. But we'll deal with that in a few years. The other thing that was kind of stunning about, here's the federal government that was saying, we need to make sure that more firearms transactions are put into our database. Almost all of them would have ended up being put into a government database. The law says they're supposed to destroy those names after 24 hours. If you're a dealer and you go online for the first time to do a background check for a purchaser, they will send you a document that explains that that name and address is going to become the permanent property of the federal government. So they're telling you in black and white that they're not keeping the law. This is the government that was complicit in the death of at least 400 Mexicans and a couple of our federal agents in Fast and Furious. They have the moral authority to decide if anybody here can buy a gun? Really? I don't think so. I think Fast and Furious, by the way, is probably one of the evidences of why John Boehner needs to go, because he has not been dealing with this issue at all. In fact, Representative Issa, who had the hearings and is the reason, especially he's the reason why we know so much about Fast and Furious, Boehner tried to keep him from having the hearings. You know, and he does play hardball against conservatives, but not so much the other side. In fact, he's such a pushover that I understand zoologists have come up with a new phylum. It describes people like Boehner who can walk upright but don't have a backbone.
Yeah, they call politicians.
So that's our guy. For instance, he didn't step in and he actually punished Representative Hulskamp. This is the guy who has been trying to get information out of Janet Reno, Napolitano. I kind of get them all mixed together. They both like to see things burn, I understand. And by the way, everybody here is on her list as a potential terrorist. They missed it again completely. Who did the bombing in Boston? 2 Muslims. Islam. Can you spell that, baby? That's what the problem is. It's not your oath keepers here. It's not your gun owners. It's not your pro-lifers. It's Muslims. You know, they're sorry it turned out to be Muslims, because they were talking on NPR and other Democrat media outlets that it was probably some right-wing type, you know, probably somebody with a T-shirt like you guys. That's the way they think. We are the enemy for these folks. So we better not fool ourselves about who we're dealing with. Let's hear it, buddy. A little bit of good news, and then I'll let the program continue, because the rain doesn't look like it's going to wait. Sheriffs are beginning to more and more stand up for the Constitution and interpose themselves between Washington and sometimes their state and the people of their county. I'll give you an example. One of our members is Brad Rogers. He's the sheriff of Elkhart County, Indiana. Brad Rogers was approached by one of his citizens, a farmer who produces raw milk. Now, I don't know if it's come to your attention, but the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, is absolutely convinced that raw milk has to be stamped out. And so they had been inspecting this guy's place and driving him crazy. They had him in federal court, and they were on the verge of stealing his equipment. So the farmer went to Rogers and explained what was happening. And Rogers, I think, immediately was in favor of doing what he ended up doing, but I believe he went out and looked at the farm because he wanted to make sure he wasn't going to be getting a pig in a poke, that there weren't dead animals all around, or, you know, whatever, something like that. And as you might expect, a raw milk producer, clean as a whistle. So Rogers went back to his office and fired off an email to the head persecutor at the FDA, the head attorney, and explained to her that you're not going to put another foot on Farmer Hostetler's property or I'll arrest you. And back came a reply from that attorney saying, well, if you do that, we'll arrest you. And Rogers, in so many words, said, game on. Well, that was 16 months ago, and that milk is still being sold by that farmer. They had their back broken by a county sheriff. It makes a huge difference because the same set of circumstances in a Wisconsin county under a state agency, kind of like the EPA, led to the farmer being shut down and he went into bankruptcy. So the sheriff is truly the one who, while they're fiddling around in Washington trying to figure out if they really ought to get rid of laws that do infringe, in spite of the language of the Second Amendment, the sheriff can take action right now. And he can defend you and me right now. So I guess if you're thinking of moving, make sure you check out who's the sheriff, because that's going to be one of the more important things you do. Anyway, I've met some people here already today that are members of Gun Owners of America. Thank you so much for supporting our work. We're going to keep working until there's no more gun laws to get rid of in Washington. Thanks so much, guys.
I don't think we can excuse Larry to go quite that quickly. We only get a guy of that caliber out here every couple of years. Larry, how about an encore in another 5 minutes with the President of Gun Owners of America, the only no-compromise gun lobby in America?
Wow. You almost caught me speechless, but probably not quite. Nice try. All right, let's, for those that might be listening from the NSA or wherever, let's explain to everybody what the Second Amendment is all about. It's for people like those that work in the NSA. It's to keep the government from going in a tyrannical direction. That's what the Second Amendment is all about. It doesn't have anything to do with Bambi. It really doesn't have anything to do with self-protection. I think that's one of the unenumerated rights protected in the 9th Amendment. But the Second Amendment is all about government and keeping it small and keeping it harmless. And we haven't been doing too good a job in that department. And that's why there's an Oath Keepers. And that's why there's this rally today. And why it is good and suitable that we do something timed around Patriots Day. Because we're standing here because of the blood that was shed by the people that came before us, and they gave us such an incredible inheritance. And with all of the challenges and all of the shortcomings that we have in our country, this is still the greatest country in the world that the world has ever seen. Some of you put your lives on the line. A lot of people have done things in many, many ways, even involvement in political campaigns and whatnot. It's time that we start keeping short lists of these politicians. I was mentioning Mr. Toomey. We're going to have a visit with him in the Republican primary. That's where we get this thing turned around. For John Boehner, we need to get, there was a great veteran that ran against him, didn't have any money. We need to get somebody that would have the money to run a decent campaign against people like John Boehner, who is absolutely a disgrace. So we got a lot of work to do. I'm encouraged that the recent elections have been going in a better direction, and it's time that we double down and keep that trend going. The 2014 election could be a very good year for those who believe in the Constitution, because not so many of the drones vote at that time. They're more presidential because that's how they get their free telephones. But for the rest of us, we can go vote in 2014, and particularly in Republican primaries. This is the time to start looking for people right now for those elections. Lindsey Graham probably is on a few short lists, and he's certainly on ours. But he's not alone. There's others. So, but I'm glad you gave him honorable mention. Lindsey Graham does deserve honorable mention in that. So, okay, that's another 5 minutes. I'm going to have to go to an airport. Happily, one that they haven't closed yet. But apparently they closed the Boston airport. So it was providential that I'm leaving from Providence. Thank you.